Hi everyone, how's everyone doing here today? Thank you for watching, and this is part 2 about getting involved. Part 1 was about donations. This one is about phone banking. Now, if you've never done it before, well, guess what? I'm about to give you a little insight into what's involved, how I did it, and some of the, little methods that I use to make it work. Some of you might have already done it before, and that's great. It may differ in different locations, in different states. I have no way of knowing. I can only tell you what I've done recently in the past and some of my experiences and some of the methods that I applied to it. Years ago, I did a few years of telemarketing, cold calling, and some of the things I learned there, I kind of applied it to phone banking. Now, for those of you who don't know, phone banking is when you it's pretty much what it is. You are calling up different people, potential voters, to either encourage them to vote or to, say that you're there representing a specific candidate and seeing if they'll support that candidate or not, or whether or not they voted. Okay? Like I said before, I'm not here to tell you who to support or who you should vote for. If you decide you're going to want to get more involved, that's great. And if you decide to do phone banking, great. I think what I'm about to explain will help you. And if you choose not to, that's fine. Or as far as who the candidate you do it for, that's up to you. I don't care what party you're with or who you're doing it for. Just one thing I encourage is getting involved, and this is one way of doing it. Now, some may think you're doing it from your own personal phone. That's the case I did it with me. Now, the way they did it is, I don't remember the name, they had a specific app that you can log into on your desktop computer. And sometimes it's done through the computer or sometimes it's done through the phone, where you call and it automatically dials the number, or if you do it through the computer, it'll dial the number for you. It shows you the list of contacts that you're going through. Now, the important thing to understand is that whether or not it's on your computer or your phone, because it's done through this application, they have no way of knowing what your home number is. Your privacy is protected. On the flip side, that's the same way with the person that you're calling. It just gives if I recall correctly, it's been a while, it gives the first name, and I don't remember if it gives the last name or just the initial, but it just gives the general area, the name, the person's age, and possible demographics. Pardon some of the background noise. And it's completely automated, at least when I did it. So you would log in, you would sign up, and I have a headset which I use for work, so I'm able to do that. Just earpieces with a microphone. If you don't own one, you can get it at any electronics store. There's some ones that are pretty cheap. They don't cost that much. I use it for work, so it's already there. Whether you decide to buy one or do it from, a regular landline, that's up to you. Technically, you could do it with a mobile phone. I only did that once, and it was towards the end, and it was a tight election. And you can do it from a mobile phone. It's not as practical or convenient, but it is possible. I would say if you can, you're better off doing it at home for the sake of convenience. Plus, there's a little bit more privacy. At the time I did it, I was en route, and cell phones can come and go. So usually the way it works, let's say we're doing it for a particular candidate, like we'll just say John Doe for practical purposes. And what they do is, and keep in mind, different candidates have different rules. They're all kind of the same, but they may vary slightly. So if they ask you to do it in a certain way that's different from what I'm explaining, then I would say do it their way, okay? Because you're volunteering for them, so, you got to respect their rules and you got to respect their methods. It's not necessarily in stone, and I'll get into that. So, usually they give you a type of script, like you're saying, hi, my name's Chris, I'm calling in as a representative of John Doe, who's running for such and such. Could be a presidential election, could be somebody that's running for senator or mayor. Again, it's up to you who you decide to vote for and whatever the cause is or the election is. And usually they have a pre-made script in front of you, which they kind of tell you to follow. Now, when I did it, I pretty much followed it, but it's usually pretty lengthy. And the one thing from experience from cold calling and stuff like that is that sometimes people are busy. Every time I did it, I always did it after hours. So, you got to keep in mind, people are getting home from work, they're tired, Usually I do it like around 8 p.m. This way it's after dinner. Nobody wants to be disturbed while they're eating. And usually after eating, most people, like myself, you just want to decompress. Usually just crash and let the cable TV run over you. So when somebody calls you, you may be interested, they may be interested, they may not be. But I try and keep it quick because I know time is of the essence. And the idea is to get them involved, okay? Now, I've never had it where I got into a real lengthy conversation with someone. Usually they're pretty quick, like literally under 3 minutes. And usually when the call goes through, you speak to the person, and depending on what the end result is, after they hang up, there's usually a brief form that you can fill out where you just take notes, meaning how did the call go? Was the person receptive? Did they say anything? Did they agree they're going to help your candidate? Or if you're getting them to vote, did they say if they voted, or if they already voted? Sometimes you're doing it to see if they already voted, and that happens sometimes, okay? So for the most part, I try and follow the script, but you also got to improvise a little, because the one thing you don't want to do is come off as mechanical, I mean, if you call and pick up the phone, it's like, hi, my name's Chris, I'm calling in regards of John Doe, who's running for king of the world. You're not going to get through to them. But if you kind of put a little enthusiasm into it, a little excitement, and most importantly, act as if you're really talking to the person face to face, it feels more natural, and it's more likely to pique their interest. Sometimes they'll just hang up right off the bat, or sometimes they'll actually engage in a conversation, or they'll be pretty receptive or not, okay? Sometimes you got to expect the unexpected. Now, this was some of the techniques I got in cold calling, where we did it a lot more aggressively. I don't recommend doing it like that. I certainly didn't do it that way. This was many years ago, where regulations weren't as strict as far as telemarketing, but over the years things have kind of changed a little bit. So you got to be respectful of the rules, and you got to remember what you're doing it for. So you got to keep that in mind. And some of the things I used to do is just stand up and walk around and pace. That's why the headset is good, it's convenient, so you're not always holding a receiver to your ear. You can just let your hands do the motion. That was the one saying they have. Motion creates the emotion. So the more you're walking, they say if you're sitting down, it's less air in your lungs, and sometimes when you talk, it doesn't come out as strong. You want to be up and about. You always want to keep that energy about you. So, and always expect a call. When the phone rings, always expect the person's going to pick up, and be prepared. And go through the script. And as I said, as you go through it, depending on what it is, some scripts have been like pretty long, like it's almost a paragraph. Some are relatively short. And some have sometimes they'll have a series of questions that they'd like you to ask the person. I try and do it respectfully, and you got to kind of like feel the person out, metaphorically speaking. You got to get an idea of if the conversation's going fluid and they seem receptive and they don't seem like they're busy or something. Some of them will say that, look, I'm really busy right now. Look, I understand, Mr. Jones. Look, just a quick question. I just want to do this, that, and the other thing. Try and get through it. But if the person seems relaxed and he's engaged and he's into the conversation, then okay, it's okay to ask a few extra questions. You want to get as much information as possible. So, and the one key thing in telemarketing, which the same applies to phone banking, it's a numbers game. The more you dial, the more contacts you get, the better results are. You want to get in touch with as many people as you can. Sometimes phone banking, they'll do it for like 3 hours. Again, you're volunteering, so depending on what your schedule is, you might not be able to do it that long. I've usually done it for like an hour or two. Usually you're pacing around and you get into it and you get a lot of contacts. The time goes pretty quick. If you can ever invest more time into it, that's up to you. And like I said, I encourage people to volunteer, but, depending on what your schedule is, or if you're really busy, or you got a workload, or you already got personal plans, like I said, I don't want you to compromise your lives, but try and get involved and see what you can do. Okay? Now, some of the times you might ask questions like, what are some of the negative things that can happen? You're going to get hung up on. That's going to happen. Get used to it. Or, I've never really gotten people that are like really rude or nasty. Sometimes, I call and I say, hi, I'm representing John Doe, and the person's like, oh, no, click. And it's like, okay, that's going to happen. Not everybody's going to be into it. The trick is always stay engaged. Most importantly, do not lose your temper. Don't let it get to you, okay? It's a volunteer initiative. That's all that it is. It is nothing personal. No matter how nasty the person gets or rude the person gets. You got to try and keep you cool, because if you start getting frustrated, if you start losing patience, that's going to come out and project over the phone, and that's going to make you less likely somebody that they're going to want to talk to. Okay, so you always want to keep you cool no matter what. It can be difficult sometimes, and if you find yourself like you're doing it and after a few calls it's getting to you, you're really getting frustrated, if you've never done it before and you find, you know, your temper's starting to flare up, cut it off. Okay, if you really can't do it, if you can't hack it, it's not for everyone, I get it, but, you know, try not to get discouraged. You know, there have been times where, you know, I can hear the automated phone dialing and then it goes to a voicemail, and then you got to like click a button and it jumps to the next call, and you just leave a quick note saying went to voicemail, didn't leave a message. I don't recall them saying to leave messages. I never did. I don't know. I think it's better if you actually talk to the person. And sometimes I've had 10-minute stretches where like 10 or 15 minutes will go by and not a single person picks up. That's bound to happen, okay? It can get a little boring sometimes. That's why, like I said, you got to move around. You got to find ways to keep yourself engaged and always like be razor sharp, be on your feet for when that next caller comes. And sometimes I'll do it. I'll think about music. I'll think of some happy thoughts. This way, you know, if you find yourself in a stretch where nobody picks up, it gets boring, so you keep yourself entertained. You continue to stay involved. You know, if you get a few calls, people keep hanging up on you and you're not getting through to anybody, it can be a little discouraging. I understand. Again, try and find ways to keep yourself engaged and stay sharp. And again, don't make it personal, all right? I've never really had a situation where somebody got like really nasty or started yelling or screaming. Could that happen? Is it possible? Absolutely. And if that really does, just hang up on them. Okay, that's what I would recommend. Again, they might suggest otherwise, and if you're not sure, ask them. Usually what they do is they have a gathering, like a Zoom call, where they'll talk to all the different volunteers, and if you have questions, ask that. Like, especially if you've never done it before and you're really not sure, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to, you know, cover all bases. This way, you're as prepared as possible, all right? And they might say the same thing. If they say otherwise, then again, like I said, follow their lead, go by them, because it's their rules and you got to respect it. The most important thing to also keep in mind is that you always want to uphold a total degree of professionalism. That is important, because you might be thinking, well, I'm just volunteering, I'm not getting paid. True, but you're doing it for a higher cause, okay? To get certain people elected, whether it's, you know, a presidential candidate or somebody in Congress, and you believe that person can do the job, otherwise you wouldn't be volunteering, okay? So whether you give like a half hour, an hour, through that time, you always want to be as professional as possible, because it's not just you representing yourself, you're representing the candidate. So if you behave in an obnoxious way, if you like, I don't know, say like a silly joke that may be off-putting, or, you know, God forbid you lose your temper, use profanity, that reflects on the candidate, and what good does that do? Even if the person's not receptive, the last thing you want to do is have him bring you down to your level. If it's really being that bad, that obnoxious, just cut it off. Or ask him, what do I do in a case like that when something happens? But the important thing is, which I'm sure they'll all agree on, is you want to keep it as professional as possible. I'm just going to move it in, get rid of some of that sun glare and everything. Now, I've had some callers like ask me like certain detailed questions about, well, why should I support this candidate, this and that. Now, usually in addition to that, sometimes they'll send you information or they'll show you the website, which lists a certain amount of key bullet points. I've never gone to the extreme where I've tried to memorize all that like a script, you know. I mean, in a way you're acting, you're doing it over the phone, not in front of the camera, but you're presenting yourself in a certain way that you may not normally do it. Pardon me, I'm talking a lot too much. The bullet points are important. The reason I don't memorize it, because it doesn't sound like I'm reading it, and it sounds more natural. And sometimes I'll ask, some of the questions will be like, what are some of the things that are important to you? Like, are you mostly concerned about healthcare? Is it the economy? Is it a living wage? Again, they'll usually have like certain questions laid out for you. So depending on how they answer, you can list like some of the bullet points that are relevant to whatever issues that concern the person that you're talking to. This way it sounds more engaging, and again, you have some proof. You don't want to jump into here and be like a blind pool and have no knowledge or little knowledge on the candidate that you're representing, okay? You don't want to come off as ignorant. You want to come off as, yes, I'm volunteering. You tell them that right off the bat, but I know what I'm doing here, and I really believe in this person. You're trying to sell them, okay? So now you might say to yourself, well, I'm not really the salesman type or anything. Guess what? Neither was I. But, I was doing telemarketing for a good number of years, so I must have gotten something right. I wasn't great at it, but it was enough to keep me going. Is it a career job? Not for me. Definitely not. If it's for you, more power to you. But, there's limitations. And I'm not volunteering all the time. Most of the volunteer work like this I do is, like I said, when certain elections come up. And, they're running for something and you want to try and get them in. You want them to win. So try and project as much enthusiasm as you can. If you have to, after the tutorial meeting, before you get started, you can just practice yourself, like just read through the script a few times, just to become familiar with it, and see how it comes off, okay? And use your judgment, okay? You might get a bunch of calls and maybe nobody will go through. That's bound to happen. Or you might make a bunch of calls and you get through to people and some of them say, yes, I intend to support that candidate. Or, you know what? You sold me. I think I'm going to go for that candidate. I've seen moments where, and this is where I say most importantly, listen to what the person's saying and address what he's saying. It could be relevant to the candidate. It may not be. Like, I picked up the phone and it was a woman. She sounded a little tired. She said she had like some kind of hernia operation. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're better, all right? Are you okay? Are you able to talk? I'll keep it quick because you sound a little tired and I don't want to disturb your rest, but I hope you're okay. See what I'm saying? Like, I do more to engage it. There's that sun again. And if they start bringing up certain things, say, empathize. Say, look, I understand that is a serious thing. It concerns me too. That's why I'm doing this. And the person that I'm here to represent, which I'm hoping you'll vote for, in the past has done this, that, and the other thing, okay? And a certain reality, this may sound like I'm being negative. I'm just being more realistic. You're not going to be able to flip everyone you get in touch with. I had one woman that she flat out told me, she says, I am not voting at all. I just don't believe it, and I've had it with it. And I talked to her for a little bit, and she was receptive, and, she wasn't dismissive, but, in the end, I just really couldn't get through to her. And to me, there's got to be a cutoff point, because, again, it's a numbers game. I really tried to, I was very sincere. I tried to give examples. I use hypotheticals like of my own. I tried to relate to it, saying there was a time where I didn't believe in voting, where I didn't do it. I was fed up with it. So I understand. However, it's important that, you do get involved, but she just didn't go for it. And that's fine. Some people I talk to and they say, yes, I already voted. I did vote for that candidate. Awesome, you made my job so much easier. I appreciate the support and everything. In a case like that, if they say try and get a little more information out of them, then do what you can. Say, look, I know you just voted and that's great, mission accomplished. However, do you mind if I ask you some quick questions? Again, use your instinct as you're talking to them. If the person seems engaged and you can get a little more information, great. If they're stopping saying, I voted already, this and that, I have to head out or something else, I understand. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. Again, sincerity, empathy, but most of all, excitement and enthusiasm. Those are the ways to get people on board. That's how you can sell them. Now, here's some experiences I've run into where you're going to get somebody that is pretty much a clown. Okay? I had one girl, a teenage girl, it sounded like, like late teens or early 20s, something like that, and she just started rambling off about all sorts of different things not related to that. In the beginning, I tried to play along with it in order to, get more involved in the conversation and get her on board. But after a while, the instinct of my brain is saying this girl isn't doing anything and her only role is to waste your time. Hang up on them. If you really feel like the person's doing that and is just being a total clown, hang up on them. don't look at it as you gotta win, you gotta get this person on board. If the person's just there to waste your time, they don't want to cooperate, then why give them the satisfaction? I don't think to me, again, and it depends on their rules, but from my experience, I just hang up on them and go to the next call. Because like I said, it's a numbers game. Now, if they're wasting my time, if I'm just wasting time speaking to them, listening to their silliness, falling for their act, then that's time taken away from calling other potential voters that I could get on board. So, you know, if you feel like you got a clown, the person's just stringing you along and is not going anywhere, don't let them waste your time, you know. After a while, I just say, okay, that's great. Have a nice day. Click, go to the next call. And just keep dialing and dialing and dialing. The more dials you make, the more chances are you get people on board. And that's pretty much the gist of it. So, what do you think? You never done it before? Are you up for the challenge? I say go for it. If you've never done it before, there's always a first time for everything. And like I said, you know, the best way to, you know, if you feel nervous about it, you're not sure, try it anyway. If it doesn't work out, if you tried and it kind of failed, well, there are other ways to get involved. But, you know, phone banking is definitely a essential thing of getting through to people, getting through to voters, and getting your candidate's message out there, and the potential of getting them to vote for them, whatever the election may be. So, and if you've had other experiences, like I said, it may differ in other states or locations. By all means, feel free to leave a comment or leave any feedback. You know, I'd be curious to hear what stories you might have to tell me, or if you have any tips that I haven't mentioned that I might be able to try the next time I do some phone banking. Okay? So, anyway, give it a shot. It's always up to you. The choice is yours. I hope you make that first step. Thank you for watching. I really hope you understand.